Primitive editing. The first public screening was December 28, 1895 at the Cinematograph Lumiere. The film was about workers leaving the Lumiere factory and arriving at a train station. George was at the event and saw something more than a moving photo, and a way to tell a story. The fall of 1896, George was in Paris filming a bus going out of a tunnel. However, his camera jammed up in the middle of the take, and when he got it to work again, the bus was long gone. But he replaced it with a hearse. After George went to develop the film, he discovered a very magical thing. When the bus came into frame, it switched to the hearse, right there in the frame. George was the first person on record of doing the first jump cut in history. He used his new skill right away, and you can see him use it in the film The Haunted Castle, 1896, where he uses to create disappearing and reappearing effects on people, as well as stuff around the room. George also brought other effects like fade in and fade out, overlapping, dissolves, stop motion, photograph, and stop motion photographic. Because of George, he pushed away from the single action shots into a more narrative storytelling. A Trip to the Moon, 1902. All his shots in the movie were usually set up like you were at a play and you had the best seat in the house. Where now these days we have multiple cameras. The birth of editing. Edwin Porter started off as a vinoscope projectionist and set up the first Edison projectors in Coaster and Biles Music Hall in New York City in April of 1896. For a few years, he operated his own equipment until he joined up with Edison's manufacturing company in 1900s. He became the head of production of Einstein's Skylight Studio in 1901. For only 5 years, he served as Einstein's director and cameraman. Edwin was really influenced by the work of George, and especially the film A Trip to the Moon, and often duplicated and resold for Edison as well. It was illegal to do at the time. Edwin tried to make his own narrative film called The Life of an American Firefighter in 1903. Edwin got a stockpile of footage from the large Edison library and spliced them together and staged scenes to create a fictional narrative. Edwin keeps pushing for narrative filmmaking and makes his next big film called The Great Train Robbery in 1903, where he uses more decisives with his cutting all through each scene, as well as one master take. However, he cuts straight between scenes without using fades or dissolves, as well as, importantly, he got each scene to reach a logical end. In 1908, just before leaving Edison to start his own production company, he hired a young man, starving actor to fill the lead part in Rescue from an Eagle's Nest, 1908. This would end up being the first break of one 14-year career for one D.W. Griffith. D.W. Griffith was from a family of 7 children, and his father was a Confederate Army colonel. Before he was in film, he was hot selling dictionaries door-to-door and acting. Griffith's lifelong ambition was to be a writer, falling in love with Victorian style of literature, especially that of dictions. Acting on advice from a friend, Griffith tried his hand at writing scenes for movie companies. Under a stage name of Lawrence Griffin, he submitted an application to play to no other than Edwin. However, Edwin rejected it for having too many scenes. However, Edwin hired the young man to star in one of his films. Griffin found a position in Biograph Company that is struggling in debt and looking for directors. After directing The Ventures of Dolly, which was shot in 2 days, Griffin was given a 45-week director's contract. Under the contract with Biograph, Griffin would make over 450 films from 1908 to 1911 and push film out of one-picture frames to a more story-based or multi-shot medium. Griffin's first invention was the cut-in, and it was used in The Great Gauntlet in 1908, and that was 4 months from his first film. The first cut-in was a medium long shot to a hanging tree to a full shot in the middle of the scene, emphasizing the motion impact of exchange between the two actors. Griffin continued to experiment with altering shot lengths using multiple camera setups to create a scene through which called continuity editing. Continuity editing is a cutting style that maintains a sense of continuity, space, and time. With the multiple camera setup being used, the 180-degree rule evolved out of practice. With the 180-degree rule, you can avoid continuity problems of confusing geographing when cutting from one angle to another. Griffith's favorite style of editing was intercutting or cross-cutting, cutting between shots in different scenes and parallel actions. He put it in the front of the editing to use the film called After Many Years in 1908, based on a poem, Example, where there was a man in a shipwreck, and then it switches to another person who is his wife in the film, who is 1,000 miles away from him. Griffin began to establish the tenets of classic Hollywood and continuity editing. Through these practices, other filmmakers took his styles and started establishing shots, reverse shots, and matching eye lines and cutting actions. D.W. Griffin remains a controversial figure of history. However, he almost single-handedly invented the conditions of editing that would establish Hollywood today.